Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Political Vigilante. My name is Graham Elwood. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. I like saying program like Tuesday and Robot and Pello and Orange. Had a great super chat this past Sunday. Appreciate everybody showing up for that. Of course, we do those every Sunday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, unless otherwise noted, but count on that every Sunday, 3 o'clock. I did it during the Super Bowl. So like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification button and watch the ads all the way through. When you click skip ad, I do not get paid. And of course, support the show on the Patreon. Welcome to a lot of new viewers we had, because the New York Times heckler getting taken down by Jimmy and myself, that's gotten 47,000 views thus far, which is fantastic. So I'm very excited for that. First of all, let's bring our fancy logo up here. In our high-tech studio, what we're doing here, guys, look at that. We're making Gotham great again. Outstanding. And of course, a lot of live shows. I'm going to be headlining in Chicago the end of the month at the Zanies in St. Charles, the Zanies downtown Chicago, and the Zanies out in Rosemont. So go to GrahamElwood.com. And of course, in March, next month, Ron Placone and I are doing the Progressive Comedy Tour in the Gulf States. We're going to Lafayette, Louisiana, Oxford, Mississippi, Pensacola, Florida, and New Orleans, the Big Easy. That is the 10th through the 13th of March. Get your tickets at GrahamElwood.com. So they've been talking a lot about Venezuela and veterans called to resist U.S. coup in Venezuela. This is on the Veterans for Peace website, which is a great organization to support. The link is in the show notes below. It's pretty obvious. Veteransforpeace.org is their general website. You know, they've come out and had some representatives at some of the shows we've done on the road for the Progressive Comedy Tour, and it's a fantastic organization. And it was started, I believe, in the early 80s by a lot of Vietnam vets. You know, the people don't realize that a lot of the anti-war movement in America in the 70s was by Vietnam vets who went there and came back and went, this is horrible. And I'm so startled and really saddened and disappointed that people who call themselves liberal are pushing this Russia thing. There's a prominent comedian who has worked on big TV shows calling Jimmy Dore a Russian asset. And first of all, it's such the crybaby thing of neoliberals, like whenever they are losing an argument, when people out-left them, because they're used to arguing with Trump supporters, right? So they feel very firm there, I'm way on the left, and they're not, because they push the Russia thing and they don't realize that's like a CIA talking point. I mean, they don't understand global defense spending, and the entire world's defense spending was at its peak in the early 80s during the height of the Cold War. And so they're trying to bring that back. And this is the most America's ever spent, but it's like they want to get the whole world back into the Cold War again, not to mention how dangerous it is and how close we have come recently to going to war with Russia. That ends life on planet Earth. And yet, anytime a neoliberal loses an argument, you're a Putin puppet. And not wanting to push this ridiculous Russia agenda doesn't mean that I support Putin. Putin has done a lot of awful things as a leader. Yeah. He is a former KGB guy, not a good guy. But it doesn't mean our presidents are that great either. And here's another crazy coup we're doing. Veterans for Peace is outraged at the unfolding coup d'etat in Venezuela, which is clearly being orchestrated by the United States government. 200 years of blatant U.S. intervention in Latin America must come to an end. Veterans for Peace was founded in 1985, in part prompted by the U.S.-backed Contra War in Nicaragua. And U.S. support for the right-wing government in the bloody civil war in neighboring El Salvador. We did not want to see another Vietnam War in Central America. That's why it's so funny, the whole like, we got to investigate. So like, I've said this from the beginning, like if Russia interfered in our last presidential election, all right, we should investigate that. But we don't want to, investigate all of it, like the corruption of the DNC primary. And we don't want to talk about the people that are all pushed, like Rachel Maddow. Is she talking about this? It's such insanity. So you think Trump is a Putin puppet, right? So he's a pawn of Russia. That's the narrative, right? So Trump wants this coup. Russia does not. So if Trump is taking his orders from Moscow, but Moscow doesn't want this, like, well, wait, I'm caught in a ridiculous neoliberal loop. And it's awful. And I don't think people realize, first of all, read a book. Read Smedley Butler's War is a Racket, and then look at what America has done, and then specifically do some research on Central and South America. We've taken land. Pinochet we put into power. Just awful people. Because it's always the same story. A democratically elected leader doesn't want to play ball with American corporate interests, so we take the guy out. And we put in some other ridiculous person. Oh, so you're a big Maduro? You like Chavez? You like... Hey, man, they wanted to privatize it's their oil. They get to do what they want with it. Can you imagine if Venezuela was telling us that we had to give up our corn or our wheat or some other natural resource that we had, or our oil? Some country told us what we had to do with our oil. Can you imagine how America would react to that? President Trump's national security advisor, John Bolton, who is a sociopath, who is an evil, evil sociopath. Don't let that Mark Twain mustache, that look feel you. He is horrible, and he would kill your children if he had to. He does not care. Has called Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba the troika of tyranny. Remember Axis of Evil? Remember they're pulling out the old playbook, gang. And boasted that if they now have met their match, right-wing Cuban-American Senator Marco Rubio of Florida. Oh, they're all awful. Said to be deeply involved in orchestrating the coup, has implied that U.S. military intervention may be next. How many wars do we need to be in? And is that we're going to have another proxy war down there with Russia? Like we did in Vietnam? When does it end? And the other thing, too, about Russia's coming, we're not talking about the fact that climate is collapsing. We're not talking about that, like, basically a meteor is coming to the planet and going to kill us all, and we need to do something about it, but we're not. We're arguing about Russia, and we're calling progressives who want to end war and a Green New Deal and deal with climate change, a Green New Deal which would fix so many problems, not just the environment, but the economy, wage inequities, sexism, racism. It would give so many more, it would give so much more help. So many issues of like sexism and racism, many of them are cultural. There's obviously or economic. There are obviously cultural reasons. There's a lot of other stuff. I'm not oversimplifying, but Fred Hampton knew it about racism. The leader of the Black Panther in Chicago in the late 60s, who orchestrated the first Rainbow Coalition. He got poor Southern whites and poor blacks together. Southern whites, many of whom were openly racist with Confederate flags, got them together and realized capitalism has pitted us against each other. So neoliberals who are comedians that go online with blue checks next to their names, who spew this stuff, are doing the bidding of awful human beings like John Bolton. He wants war with Russia. He wants war in Venezuela. He wants war with Iran. He wants war with North Korea. He just wants war. It's good for business. And I guess if you're a comedian that works for the corporate media on some network like, I don't know, Comedy Central, then you're part of the machine. There's no anti-war movement in this country. There's Medea Benjamin. People who, if you are pushing Russia and you want war and you want all this crazy shit to happen, don't call it, you're not liberal. Just say you're like a pro-choice warmonger. You're for gay rights and pro-choice. You want to uphold Roe v. Wade, and then you like war. You hope for war. Just say that. Yeah. You're for civil rights, a woman's right to choose, and gay rights, and the right for the military-industrial complex to force coups down our throats for the benefit of corporations. Just say that. Responding to questions about possible military intervention, President Trump says that all options are on the table. Ugh, psychopath. Trump and Vice President Mike Pence. You got to think Mike Pence is probably secretly gay, right? That's why he does all that shock the gay out of people. He's probably. Come on, Mike. We've all had a couple of crazy weekends, Mike. I'm not judging you for being gay, Mike, but keeping it hidden and then wanting to electrocute gays? Maybe you just deep down you like dudes and you feel ashamed about it. Don't feel ashamed, Mike. Come out. Be happy. There's parades. You don't need to be this right-wing psychopath. Anyway, they've encouraged the Venezuelan military to stage a coup, and U.S. officials have even met with potential coup leaders. Right-wing governments in Colombia and Brazil could also possibly be involved in the U.S. coordinated military action against the democratically elected government of Venezuela. We're not the good guys. In our statement of purpose, Veterans for Peace promises to restrain our governments from intervening overtly and covertly in the internal affairs of other nations. We call all our members in over 100 U.S. cities and internationally to make their voices heard. We must do all we can to prevent a bloody civil war from taking a huge toll on the Venezuelan people and the peace-loving people of the hemisphere. This was an Common Dreams. Open letter by over 70 scholars and experts condemns U.S.-backed coup attempt in Venezuela for the sake of the Venezuelan people. That's the other thing, too. Yeah. Do you know how many people's lives you ruined? Imagine whatever town you live in America, let's say. You're an American and you're for all this war stuff. You're a neoconservative or you're a neoliberal. You both want war. Imagine people getting starved out in your town. Imagine soldiers shooting and bombing stuff in your nice American town. Imagine that. Because that's what we're forcing down there. And then sanctions, imagine that. The grocery store is closed, there's no gas, people can't work, people are starving, it causes food riots and all this other stuff. Gangs. Imagine that. Actions, and this is in the Common Dreams article, actions by the Trump administration and its allies in the hemisphere are almost certain to make the situation in Venezuela worse. And then what is our media doing? Oh, people are eating out of the garbage and blah, 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 blah. Are there some people down there doing that? Yeah. There's people doing that here in America. Right now in Los Angeles, a stone's throw from my front door, I guarantee you there's people digging through a trash can right now because there's a serious homeless problem all over America, but especially in Los Angeles. It'll make the situation worse, leading to unnecessary human suffering, violence, and instability, the letter reads. The U.S. and its allies must cease encouraging violence by pushing for violent extralegal regime change. If the Trump administration and its allies continue to pursue their reckless course in Venezuela, the most likely result will be bloodshed, chaos, and instability. The reality is that despite hyperinflation, shortages, and deep depression, Venezuela remains a politically polarized country. The U.S. and its allies must cease encouraging violence by pushing for violent, extralegal regime change. If the Trump administration and its allies continue to pursue their reckless course in Venezuela, the most likely result will be bloodshed, chaos, and instability, which these people seem to get off on, and then neocons and neoliberals seem to not give a shit about it. The U.S. should have learned something from its regime change ventures in Iraq, Syria, Libya, and its long, violent history of sponsoring regime change in Latin America. And the New York Times, by the way, has been supporting coups. They just did an op-ed piece in support of this. They've been supporting coups since 1954, the New York Times, since 1954. That's why you guys come here, because they're not going to say this. They're not going to read. They're not going to talk about this on Fox or MSNBC or whatever. That's why you guys come here. Thank you for getting your news here. Please support the show. Go to the Patreon. You can support this show for as little as $1 a month. Come out to one of the live shows. Like, subscribe, share the videos, and watch the ads all the way through. Thanks for watching.